Test of true loyalty. Bernard was a man whose generosity flowed like a river, lifting up everyone around him. But as he watched those he supported prosper, a haunting question crept into his mind. Do they truly care for me, or just the comfort my wealth brings them? Desperate for answers, he devised a risky plan that would force the people he trusted most to reveal their true colors. What would he discover when the illusion of his security was stripped away? And would it be worth the cost?
Like and subscribe.
In the bustling city of Aba, in southeastern Nigeria, there lived a man named Bernard. He was well known for his kindness and generosity, always eager to lend a hand to those in need. Bernard was married to Ngozi, a caring woman who stood by his side through thick and thin, and they had two beautiful children, Ifema and Oj. They lived a modest yet comfortable life, and Bernard made sure his family and everyone around him were taken care of. Aba, famous for its vibrant markets and bustling streets, was the place where Bernard's goodwill shone brightly. Many of his extended family members had moved to the city from the village to seek better opportunities. Bernard, with his connections and wealth, helped them establish small businesses. He provided funds for shop rentals, bought goods to stock their stores, and even set up a few of them with transport businesses. Whenever one of them faced a challenge, he was the first person they ran to, and he never hesitated to assist. To the outside world, Bernard was a pillar of support, a man who selflessly sacrificed for the well-being of others. But deep inside, a troubling thought began to grow within him. Do they truly care for me, or do they only stay close because of what they gain from me? As time went on, this question began to consume him, turning his nights restless. He wanted to know if his extended family members truly loved him or if they were only loyal to his wealth. Bernard knew that the only way to uncover the truth was through a test, a prank that would reveal the hearts of those he had helped. He pondered over it for days, and then he devised a plan, one that would put everyone to the test. One sunny afternoon, Bernard went out to the riverbank on the outskirts of Aba. It was a quiet spot, away from the noise of the city, where the waters flowed calmly, reflecting the blue sky above. He left his sandals and a few personal belongings by the river's edge, making it look as if he had gone for a swim and never returned. A few hours later, a young boy who was fishing nearby stumbled upon the sandals and clothes. Recognizing them as Bernard's, the boy raised an alarm, running back to the city to spread the news. Within a short time, word had spread through the markets and streets. Bernard has drowned in the river. The news reached Bernard's family like a thunderbolt. Ngozi collapsed to the ground, wailing uncontrollably. Ifema and Oj clung to their mother, their young faces stained with tears, unable to comprehend the loss of their father. People gathered in their home, offering words of comfort, but the pain was too raw, too deep. Bernard had been their rock, their protector. Now, they were alone. In the following days, the extended family gathered for a meeting. They spoke of how Bernard's death was a great loss to the family, and they shed tears in front of each other. But when it came to the issue of supporting Ngozi and her children, their faces hardened. Some murmured that they were also struggling with their businesses, while others made promises that they had no intention of keeping. After the initial gathering, the so-called well-wishers disappeared. None of them visited Ngozi again. The once lively home of Bernard, always filled with visitors and laughter, became silent. Days turned into weeks, and the family's situation grew more desperate. The little savings Ngozi had were quickly exhausted, and she struggled to provide for Ifema and Oj. She sent messages to Bernard's cousins and brothers, reminding them of their promises, but they either ignored her or made excuses. Bernard's cousin, Kelechi, who now ran a thriving electronics shop set up by Bernard, stopped taking Ngozi's calls. His uncle, who managed a flourishing transport business, claimed he had too many expenses to assist. Even Bernard's own brother, Emeka, who owned a shoe factory in Ariaria Market thanks to Bernard's investment, turned his back, saying he was barely keeping the business afloat. Meanwhile, in a small rented room in another part of Aba, Bernard watched from the shadows. He had not drowned. In fact, he had been hiding since that fateful day. From his hiding place, he observed the unfolding events through a few trusted friends who kept him informed about the situation at home. Bernard had arranged for small sums of money to be delivered to Ngozi through anonymous means, ensuring his children's school fees were paid and that they could eat. But he remained hidden, waiting for the day when he would reveal himself. Months passed, and Ngozi's struggle deepened. She took up small jobs, washing clothes for people and selling food at the roadside just to make ends meet. The children, Ifema and Oj, had to adapt to a life far different from the comfort they once knew. They no longer went to private schools but managed with the local public school. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Ngozi sat outside their small, run-down home, staring into the night sky. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she remembered her husband, the man she believed had been swallowed by the river.
She whispered to herself, "Oh Bernard, why did you leave us like this?" But as she spoke, little did she know that Bernard, from his secret hiding place, heard of her pain and felt the sting of guilt. Yet he knew the time was not yet right for his return. He had to see if any of those he once supported would show up. The city of Aba continued to bustle around them, but for Ngozi and her children, life had become a daily struggle for survival. The same relatives who had once dined in their home, celebrating Bernard's generosity, now walked past them without a second glance. Kelechi, Emeka, and the others had become strangers. One fateful morning, Bernard decided that it was time. He arranged a gathering of the extended family under the pretense that a wealthy benefactor had come to the city with a special interest in helping their family. Messages were sent to all of Bernard's relatives, urging them to gather at a community hall near the river where Bernard had supposedly drowned. Ngozi, unaware of the true reason for the gathering, attended as well, carrying the burden of her grief and exhaustion. The relatives arrived one by one, some in cars, others on motorcycles, all curious about this mysterious benefactor who wanted to help them. They sat in the hall, murmuring among themselves, waiting for this unknown helper to arrive. Bernard's brother, Emeka, whispered to Kelechi, "Maybe this man will be as generous as Bernard was. We might get something good from this." They chuckled quietly, oblivious to what was about to unfold. Just as the chatter reached a peak, a shadowy figure appeared at the entrance of the hall. The room fell silent. The figure stepped into the light, and gasps filled the air. There, standing before them, was Bernard, alive and well. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the stunned faces of his relatives, their mouths agape, their bodies frozen in disbelief. Ngozi let out a cry, rushing forward, but she stopped short, tears streaming down her face. "Bernard, is this really you?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Bernard nodded, his own eyes welling up as he embraced her tightly, feeling the weight of all the months they had spent apart. For a moment, the hall was filled with the sounds of their reunion, but then Bernard turned to face the rest of his family. His expression hardened, and his voice carried an edge they had never heard before. "I wanted to see the truth," he began, his voice echoing in the room. "I wanted to know if you all truly cared for me, or if it was my money that kept you around. So, I disappeared, leaving you to think I was gone forever. And in my absence, I saw who you really are." The silence was heavy. Kelechi shifted uneasily, avoiding Bernard's gaze, while Emeka bowed his head in shame. None of them dared to speak. The truth hung between them, too sharp to be denied. Bernard continued, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and disappointment. "You abandoned my wife and children when they needed you the most. You all flourished in the businesses I set up for you, yet you turned your backs on them. Not one of you offered to help, even though I did so much for you. Now tell me, where is your loyalty? Where is the love you claimed to have for me?" The words struck like thunder, and the relatives began to stammer, trying to find excuses, but Bernard raised a hand to silence them. "Enough," he said firmly. "I have seen all I need to see. From this day, I withdraw my support from each of you. I will focus only on my wife and children, those who have remained true through the storm." With those words, he turned, leading Ngozi and their children out of the hall, leaving the relatives behind, dumbfounded and full of regret. They had lost not only the support they once took for granted, but also the respect and trust of the man who had once been their pillar. Back at home, Bernard sat with his family, surrounded by Ngozi, Ifema, and Oj. The children clung to their father, not wanting to let go, afraid that he might disappear again. Bernard held them close, tears streaming down his face. For the first time in months, he felt the warmth of his family around him, and it was more precious than anything he had ever given to his ungrateful relatives. That evening, as they sat together in their small living room, Ngozi asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Bernard, why did you do this? Why did you let us believe you were gone? Do you know the pain we went through?" Her voice trembled, carrying the weight of her suffering. Bernard took a deep breath, his expression turning somber. "Ngozi, I am sorry. I never meant to hurt you or the children. But I needed to know the truth. For years, I've been helping my brothers, cousins, and even distant relatives, but I kept wondering if they cared for me or just for my money. I thought if they believed I was gone, I could see their true hearts. I never imagined they would abandon you like this." Ngozi wiped her tears, struggling to understand, but she could see the hurt in Bernard's eyes, the pain of betrayal that had driven him to such lengths. She reached out and held his hand, squeezing it gently. "I forgive you, Bernard. But promise me, never again. We need you here with us. The children need their father." Bernard nodded, embracing his family tightly. He knew he had put them through a great ordeal, but he was determined to make things right. From that day on, he focused his efforts on rebuilding his life with Ngozi and their children. He worked tirelessly to regain his position in the bustling markets of Aba, setting up a new business and slowly rebuilding the life they had lost. Meanwhile, Bernard's relatives struggled with the consequences of their actions. Kelechi's electronics shop faced unexpected challenges, and Emeka's shoe factory began losing customers. Without Bernard's support and guidance, they soon realized that the security they once enjoyed was gone. They tried to reach out to Bernard, sending messages of apology, but he remained resolute in his decision. He had seen their true nature, and he knew he could no longer trust them as he once had. As the months went by, Bernard's new business flourished, and he found peace in knowing that he was focusing on those who genuinely cared for him. His home became a place of joy once again, filled with laughter and love. Ifema and Oj adjusted back to their new lives, grateful to have their father back with them. One day, as the sun set over the city of Aba, Bernard sat with Ngozi and watched their children play in the yard. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of fulfillment that he had not felt in a long time. "I have learned a great lesson," he said softly to Ngozi, who nodded in agreement. "It is better to have a few people who love you genuinely than many who stay close just for what they can get." Ngozi rested her head on his shoulder, a gentle smile on her face. "Yes, Bernard. And no matter what happens, we will face it together as a family." And so, Bernard learned the value of true loyalty and the strength of a united family. Though he had lost the trust of those who once called him a benefactor, he gained something far more precious: the unbreakable bond with his wife and children, who stood by him through the darkest of times. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our YouTube channel, Chukwudi Alola Studio at Chukwudi Alola. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our exciting videos. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.